Hi, everyone. Good day. Welcome to today's webinar, Managing Your Order Commit Using GOP Cloud. My name is Christina Bergman, and I will be helping facilitate today's presentation. We'll introduce the presenters. For you today, we have Dwayne Hardacre, Managing Partner with AVATA, and we're happy to have Dave Scheidler, Senior Director, SCM Sales Support with Oracle, and also our Cloud Solution Architect, Sanjay Agrawal. Just a few housekeeping items as we move through. A reminder, everyone has come in muted and in presentation mode. We'll be recording the webinar, so if anybody misses anything, we will make this available to everyone who attends. And if you have questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to submit those in the side panel. And if we've got time towards the end of the presentation, we will definitely answer those. If not, we will reach out to you individually. So with that, I will turn it over to Dwayne.
Thanks, Christina. Hey, everyone. Thanks for being here. Hopefully, we have an exciting webinar today. We're going to go over briefly a little bit about AVATA. We're going to go over some GOP basics or available to promise. Then we're going to have a kind of discussion, Q&A with our guest speaker, Mr. Dave Scheidler. And then, time allowing, we're going to have some questions at the end. So hopefully, everyone on the webinar has heard of AVATA over the years. AVATA started and still is to this day. Our DNA is around supply chain. We're a supply chain firm. Focused around the fundamental concepts of people, process, and technology. And as you can see, people being the biggest challenge oftentimes in these projects. With a relentless customer focus. We'll talk more about that in a second. While our DNA and our roots are founded in supply chain and we're still a supply chain firm today, because of our manufacturing supply chain operational background and roots, it's allowed us to successfully migrate and expand the business into some other areas. Obviously, cloud today is our key focus, and in that key focus, we're focusing on supply chain management, but we've added into that enterprise performance management. So when you talk about planning and budgeting, as well as, full ERP cloud, so financials, procurement, and all the other aspects of it. Several years ago, we did also kick off a JD Edwards practice, again, doing the end-to-end suite because of the alignment with our background in manufacturing. When it comes to cloud, again, this is why we're here today. We're talking about Oracle's Cloud GOP solution. Again, some fantastic things in that solution. And I'm excited and happy to say that AVATA, starting several years ago, was actually a co-development partner with Oracle on some of these supply chain applications. So it's given us a great opportunity to get in on the ground floor and help be involved in that whole process with Oracle. From an industry perspective, we cover a pretty wide variety of industries. At any one time, one sector might heat up more than another, but we focus on several key industries. Let's talk about the basics of GOP or available to promise. Let's start with an age-old problem. This has been around for a long time. We're talking about poor customer service levels, lost customers, and lost opportunities. Why is that? Because there's an inadequate, manual, unreliable order commit process that doesn't either utilize any available to promise capabilities or is extremely broken. Ultimately, that increases cost, decreases revenue, right? Because you have lost opportunities because you can't fulfill an order. What are some characteristics of an ailing ATP process? So, again, when I was back in industry, some of these resonate very much with me. This was a problem we struggled to overcome. A manually disconnected process from supply chain. So your order management was one process, and there was a manual handoff that went over the fence for your ATP over to supply chain. Sometimes it took a day, sometimes it took a week to get some information back. Customers unhappy about the changing dates. So when they do get a date, the date isn't managed or it changes. High priority, this is a key one. This used to happen to us all the time. you have a high priority customer that places his order well outside of lead time. Plenty of time to fulfill the order on time per the request date. But 3 days before the order is due to ship, another customer comes in, places an order, and steals that other customer's priority or steals their inventory. So, and oftentimes you have maybe a lower priority customer stealing inventory that you really wanted and had planned for a higher priority customer. I realize, all customers are important, but the reality is they're not all equal. This is something that we struggled with all the time. And of course, what do? Well, you go through a fire drill and you expedite production, or you reach out to a contract manufacturer so you can get some goods quickly to try to still fulfill that higher priority customer. Obviously, increasing your production and shipping costs, and there's your cost increase. Lack of real-time visibility into available inventory. So I could have inventory sitting in my channel somewhere. It could be at multiple distribution centers. Which one do I fulfill from? Which one makes sense to fulfill from? So again, you may have a customer that says, hey, I know I only forecasted 100,000 units this month, but I really like 150,000. And if you don't have visibility into this inventory, you might have another 50,000 sitting in a channel somewhere that you could get that additional revenue. But if you don't have that visibility, you may lose out on that. And of course, the metrics that are impacted on this are a wide variety. The most common one is your on-time delivery or on-time and in full. The perfect order we hear a lot about, days sales outstanding, order cycle time, fulfillment lead time, and there's the perceived part. There's the perceived quality and supply chain excellence, right? When you're constantly causing these problems for your customer, there's a perception your customer is going to have as to your acumen in order management and supply chain operations. Well, it's only getting harder today, right? As order promising is the key link between order management and fulfillment and supply chain. And with the increased complexity of global supply chains, shrinking lead times, obviously you got customer expectations for give me more at lower cost. And then of course the explosion of the delivery channels, or for specifically for the retail, omni-channel, right? So you look to the right here, the number of customers ordering from multiple channels during the last 12 months increased 45%, and it's only going to get more and more challenging. In a study done by Supply Chain 247, they highlighted, and this was spot on, right? As these challenges continue to grow, the top 2 priority challenges across the manufacturing, high tech, and retail industries for maintaining customer satisfaction have to do with your order promising. And then taking that a little further, the factors driving costs for order fulfillment, again, related directly or indirectly to order promising and not being able to have a solid process and capabilities and system around that function. So that brings us to what we're talking about today, Oracle's GOP in the cloud. Again, this is a forefront of the order management and customer facing process. And it's a key part to the order management process. Likewise, it's also a key aspect to the end-to-end supply chain. It drives these two things together, and you're going to hear this later. I've seen over the years, this is one of those projects that can be very challenging. I've seen companies start and stop this type of project because of the numerous cross-functional impacts it has and the depth and complexity it can have. So by really focusing on your order processing process and technology, you will improve your order management and customer service. You will improve your supply chain and fulfillment capabilities. So understanding a little bit about order promising, there's a lot of different aspects of it. And we're going to talk about that right now as the complexity, where to start. So in a nutshell, GOP has many types of supply. It can be from finished goods in stores and distribution centers to purchase items that are in transit, where you're looking at an expected arrival date. This can also include manufacturing work orders or your supply plan or production schedule. It can look at all these different things to see, do I have supply immediately available? Do I have supply coming available? And where is that supply? And as we get more sophisticated, it can actually consider capacity or lower level components or subassemblies. So I might not have immediate supply available, but what's my capability to produce the supply and still meet the customer request date? And all this, it's looking at your resources, your calendars, and your lead times. So with that understanding of ATP or global order promising, we put it into different buckets of capabilities. So starting with the most simplistic available to promise, you have a lead time commit, which is simply, and truth be told, you do not need a system for this. This is the age old, I take an order, I give it a 3-week commit. It's due in 3 weeks. Next order, due in 3 weeks. Doesn't matter anything about location, quantity, etc. From there, you can get into a simplified ATP. So that is, again, you're starting now to get into a little bit of system capability integrated in your order management process, where you're looking at your on-hand inventory, finished goods on hand, sitting in a warehouse or a store. Oftentimes, this is a single location, your primary fulfillment location, and potentially scheduled receipts. From there, you can go to a ATP based on supply plan or production plan output. So now you may not have the inventory sitting there available for use, but now you ask the question, does my production plan have it? Am I planning to build it? And based on the dates of my production plan, will that meet the customer request date? From there, you can get into capable to promise. Well, I'm not planning to build it, but can I build it in time? What is my resource, my lead time, my capacity, my even down to my components? Do I have my long lead time critical components available? And then you can get into, and this is personally for me what I see so important out there in industry, across all the industries, is your allocated available to promise. This is where you're starting to look at customer segmentation and allocating supply to appropriate customers. But now you're talking about business rules around how do I steal? If I need to steal from customer A to give to customer B, what's the rules around that? What's my policies and what are my, what's my system setup? And then from there, you can get into truly a global GOP, where you're taking an order and you're looking at the optimal fulfillment location. I may stock this part throughout multiple distribution centers in the United States. I take the order in the Northwest. I can have a primary fulfillment location, but if that doesn't meet the customer request date, can I go to a secondary location? Or does it make sense for me to build it? Is it quicker and cheaper for me to build it, or do I go to the next distribution center and fulfill it out of a second distribution center, or even a stocking location at the factory? So again, you can see the levels of complexity, and we're going to talk about that next. From there, I'm going to hand this over to Sanjay, who's going to kind of take all this and help you say, well, where do we start?
Thank you, Dwayne, for the background on GOP. This is a perfect segue into the next topic of where to start. Now, where to start actually deals with what you want to achieve from a GOP project. It deals with what are the pain points that you're trying to resolve, what are the metrics that you are trying to improve, and ask yourself whether it aligns with your company supply chain strategy. And ATP directly aligns with the top line revenue, so it has to align with the company goals and the supply chain strategy as well. And then what is your timeline? Do you want to resolve an issue in 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months? Again, assess your starting point and be truthful, right? Whether you're starting from a manual process or from Excel sheets with no real ATP process in place. You might have to assess your culture as well. And as Dwayne mentioned earlier, GOP is one of the most cross-functional projects touching different departments like finance, supply chain, procurement, order management, just to name a few. And understand your culture, right? Think about breaking into different phases. The GOP project can be broken into different phases, which we'll talk about in a couple of slides. And depending on all of the above, you might have to formulate a different phased approach. And oftentimes we have learned that GOP projects have failed. So try to understand why it failed, what worked for the company, and what did not work for the project. Which leads me to the next topic of what are the key foundation elements of the projects of this nature: people, process, and technology. From a people perspective, try to understand what are the current roles and responsibilities within your organization. Lots of people will get impacted from a GOP project. Evaluate the current skill set of your team. And also, do you have skill set within your customer service team, within your supply chain team? Because truth be told, the resources will need to have a better analytical capability to have the ATP process working. And all of these lead to change management. So within a GOP project, we got to have change management baked into the project. From a process standpoint, understand your current processes. Break the process into different sub-steps and find out who owns which steps. And think about the future processes, right? Draw up a future process flow. It could be a high-level process flow. And also define business rules and key requirements for your projects. I'm saying key requirements because the key word is key. You might come up with 1,000 requirements, but try to define what are the key requirements which will help the project. And last but not the least, technology. We are talking about Cloud GOP today, but then again, assess your starting point, where you are. Are you starting from a manual processes, or are you starting from some kind of a software that you already have for GOP process? And based on that, align your project with the software solution that you're trying to implement. And what I've said on this slide, a lot can be done without external consulting help, but you are welcome to take external consulting help as well. And we have seen a lot of clients actually using internal resources to map out a lot of these things. This graph shows the different complexities of ATP project. So basically, depending on the supply chain maturity that you have in your organization, based on process and systems, you can start with a simplified ATP, which is like, give me an ATP based on hand and scheduled receipts. That's a simplified ATP. And as your supply chain matures, you can move up to ATP based on supply plan output. But then the important thing about that is your data management has to be solid because the supply plan output is the key for ATP process to work. If your supply plan output itself is not good, then your ATP will not be good as well. And then as your supply chain processes mature, you can move to allocated ATP, CTP, and GOP. And the supply chain projects of this nature it's like a journey. You have to start with a foundational element and transform into a mature supply chain. With that, let me introduce you to Dave Scheidler from Oracle. He's one of the most known persons in the cloud supply chain area and particularly strong in GOP domain. Dave, welcome.
Thanks, Sanjay, for having me on the call today.
Thank you. Dave, my first question to you is around market. So there is a lot of confusion around where the market is headed to from a cloud supply chain perspective, from a GOP perspective. Can you throw a little bit of light on that?
Yeah, absolutely, right. And I think, when we look at it specifically from a GOP perspective, I think the best way to understand where the market's going is to understand kind of where it's been, right? And a lot of times when I work with customers, it's very helpful for me to understand where they fit in kind of a maturity model perspective, right? And I think that is helpful for their projects as well, because we don't want to have customers that start maybe in a stable category and think that, the first phase of their project, they're going to jump to transformational, right? And so when we take a look at, the maturity model, again, this varies by industry. And so if we take a look at, high tech, for example, you'll find a lot of companies in high tech and more stable and trying to get the best practice. When we get to other industries like retail, where they're dealing with lots of customers and high expectations about, I want to be able to buy it online and pick it up in store, and the inventory has to be perfect, even though in a retail store, there's a lot of stuff in cart that's going out the door every minute of the day. They deal with some very unique problems. And so you're going to find them, just because of market pressure, more in the transformational side of the business. But what I think is helpful is just to kind of understand, everybody has their own journey on the global order promising perspective. From foundational, we still have customers that are out there that are doing more of the manual order scheduling. Things come in and maybe these are, low volume orders. We're doing 5, 10 orders, 20 orders a week kind of thing. We find this, we have some customers in like coal, for example. Coal was one of our customers at Oracle that, they have a handful of customers, maybe 30 or 35 customers. They get in maybe 10 or 15 orders a week. So there's not really a necessary GOP call for that, because they're got silos full of coal. And so they're kind of doing it from a manual perspective, and that works for their industry. Moving from that, you kind of move up the spectrum a bit, and we get into this thing called lead time based scheduling, which is really just being able to quote, hey, it's 7 days out from now. So anytime an order comes in, just like Dwayne was saying, we just give them a constant quote of 7 days or 14 days. We see this a lot in high tech, and I say high tech is shifting from stable to best practice because they do a lot of contract manufacturing and they have long lead times. A lot of that stuff's coming in from China, and for them, when looking back through the supply chain, they don't have huge distribution centers within North America. And so what they're really looking at is kind of this lead time based scheduling of saying that, the product's on the way. We know what it takes to get from China to here. And so you'll start seeing that more so in industries where there's a longer lead time and outsourced manufacturing. Again, it's not integrated with planning. It's very a rules-based centric way of promising. So it's basically, coming in and quoting a date to that particular customer, and then trying to resolve exceptions as they happen, as the actual shipments get delayed or the shipments get pulled forward, and then they kind of reconcile what to do with those open orders and maybe missed expectations, or whether the chance to pull that order forward. We're seeing a lot of people in high tech shifting into more of the best practice because they're using advanced supply chain planning, and they really want to be able to start using GOP from a planned output perspective. So they want to be able to generate a promise date based on what they anticipate in the supply chain. So there you'll find customers that are integrated with the ASCP or advanced supply chain plan. They're getting down to component-based promising. So if there's a particular component within a bill of material that has a shortage or an outage, they're able to see which of the components has a problem so that they can go to that component manufacturer and start escalating that process. You'll start seeing them do multi-source rules. So in other words, if I don't have it in one location, I kind of shift it to another location to get the stock from that location. They're not really doing any type of optimization. This is more of a kind of a round robin. So I'm going to start with location 1. That's my most desired. If I don't have it there, then I'm going to just ship to location 2. And then if I don't have it there, I'll ship to location 3. And then again, they're trying to do real-time based promising. With lead time based, you just quote a date, so there's no real uptime associated with it. We're going to get into using the supply chain plan and trying to effectively give them a date real time. Then you need to minimize the downtime as you get supply updates from your contract manufacturers or from your own manufacturing facility. And then we kind of move into the transformational area, and in there we're looking at really improved uptime. These are, when I talk about industries, retail is one of these where it's more 24/7 by 365, kind of the Amazon effect of constantly available. We want to look at things like, attribute-based promising and being able to provide not only what source location can I go get the stock from, but what's the most optimal to go get the stock from. It's a concept we call profitable to promise. So now we can start incorporating fulfillment cost into the equation. And so, you start seeing them wanting to do enhanced simulation capabilities for outages or shortage, and they want us to understand the impact of what's happened to a bulk of orders over a period of time and then replan those best they can. And so from that perspective, if we kind of move forward, where we see the market headed, right, is like I talked about, making sure that you incorporate things like profitable to promise, being able to generate just not here's your date, right, when you type in an order, but give you multiple options. So if you use this carrier and you want to get it there by this day, this is what it's going to cost you, and this is the delivery. But if you wanted to use a different carrier, this is how much it would cost you and what's your impact to margin. That is part of the simulation capability. So before you commit, you can actually simulate it. And then again, with all the cloud applications today, everybody wants to have dashboards and analytics to graphically see exactly what's going on.
The next question that I have is around the key functionalities. So oftentimes we are asked about, so Oracle Cloud GOP has several functionalities, right? There might be hundreds and thousands of functionalities. But what we want to know, and some of the customers want to know, is what are the key functionalities that the customers are looking for?
Yeah, great question, right? So if we look at some of these key functionalities that we've kind of put into the product here, we're seeing a screenshot of what the GOP promise looks like towards the bottom of the screen, right? If we take a look at that, we're actually seeing what we talked about earlier, which are the multiple options or the scenario, right, that we can model. And so when you type in an order and you're basically saying, hey, I want to ship this product to this customer, you don't just get a date. Now, you can do that if you'd like, right? But a lot of customers want to be able to see what are all of my options associated with that, especially, considering retail and the Amazon effect. If you want this 2-day in your Prime, this is when you'll get it. If you want it 3-day, it'll only cost you this much. If you want it 5-day and we give you a $5 gift card next time you come back in, we can do it that way. And so now you're starting to see industries pushing for the multiple option scenario along with the fulfillment cost associated with it. And that's kind of what we're seeing in this particular scenario, which is on a one order line. Here's what's come back in and from the GOP engine, and it said, here are all the different ways in which I can fulfill, and here's the cost associated with doing that. And so definitely one of the key features that customers are looking for today when they look at global order promising solutions. So I think if we continue on, the next thing is the big thing that we hear about a lot is really the analytics. And so what we can see here at the bottom of the screen are the advanced analytics that come with the application. So, again, looking at that one particular order line, I've got a quick, easy snapshot. I can see what's available in the locations that this customer gets serviced from. So we can see to the right of the screen, there's Atlanta, Seattle, and Chicago, and that's where we get our stock for this customer. Real easy graphically to see how much stock I have available. Not only do we show you what's on the shelf, we also show you what's been allocated to a customer, which is already reserved for a different customer. If there was an emergency, you now know that you could rob Peter to pay Paul because you know that some of that stock's been allocated to a different customer. And then on the far left side of the screen, right, again, those analytics are keeping track of margin and fulfillment costs associated with doing that. And those graphs are refreshed real time. So if I were to make different selections about, sending it truckload or ground versus moving it over next day air, all of these graphs update instantaneously, right? So that we can quickly see as we're doing these scenario models exactly what's happening from a performance perspective. And then if we kind of move ahead, the bigger macro picture, right? So we were kind of looking at one order line within a particular order. As we move up the scale, right, the other thing that customers want to really take a look at is how well am I performing over time? And so, when we look at orders coming in, what's my on-time delivery rate or my on-time promising rate? And so we also provide with GOP macro level views of, by day, how well I'm performing over the period of a month, how well am I performing? But in addition to that, it also lets me look at of the orders that are delayed or that are late. I can look at it by number of order lines that are out there. I can look at it by dollar value. I can resort that and look at it by order revenue and order margin. We have a lot of customers that as they're getting to the end of the quarter will actually resort that based on margin or revenue, depending on what target they're trying to hit before they get done with the quarter. And this allows them to quickly go in, find all the high margin orders, reprioritize, get those out the door before in the quarter. Or it allows you to drill in and take a look at all the revenue, the higher revenue based orders. So if we're going to try to reach a particular goal from a revenue perspective by end of quarter, we can quickly find those orders that are delayed and push them through the channel so that they get out and get shipped, and we get credit for the actual sales in that particular quarter. Now, from where we're going perspective, right? So this is all things that we currently have in the application today. As we start moving forward and we look at the roadmap for where we're headed, right? We already have SOAP-based APIs within the application. So from an integration perspective, pretty straightforward. It's all open, via web services. The next thing we're doing is enhancing those web services into REST APIs. And so that will support all of the different web services that are in GOP today. So check availability, and there's two forms of that. There's a full and a quick check, the auto schedule, the schedule sales order, and a cancel. So keeping up with the modern technology from an integration perspective is key on the roadmap. In addition to that, if we kind of go to the next slide, we'll see that we're also doing arrival sets. So, today we have all the lines have to ship together, and that's called a ship set. In the future, all right, we're adding arrival sets, which is really when product is coming from different locations. So some's coming out of one location, some's coming out of a different location. We want them to arrive at the customer at the same time. That's an arrival set, and so that's one of the features that we'll be adding into the application moving forward. And then if we go to the next slide, we'll see that some key enhancements really around the engine itself, right? High volume GOP, we're working on that. Not that we don't do high volume today, we do, so I don't want to mislead you, but we have some recent customers that have signed up with Oracle and are performing 650,000 order lines per day. So you can see kind of when we say high volume, we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of thousands of line items. And so we want to do, have better support for those extremely high volume environments. So enhanced scalability and fault tolerance of how we load balance the application over different servers. And then we'll continue to support all those key existing GOP features. So when we want to, run through a scenario model and we want to provide all the different options and we want to show you the freight cost and all of that, we want to be able to do that, but do that in an environment that has, a customer that has 600,000 plus order lines. When we look at industries like grocery, we've done some benchmarking with some of our customers in grocery. The average customer buys 63 order lines, right, at the grocery store. And, as you can imagine, one of the highest volume retailers you'll run into is grocery, because everybody goes to the grocery store usually more than once a week. And so you end up with 2, 3, 4, 5 million order lines potentially per hour. And so that's a fairly high volume.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. That was great information. Oftentimes, we are asked by customers about what are the key features or key upcoming enhancements. So that was great information. Thank you. My next question goes around the values. So typically, when we get into sales cycle, the customers typically ask, okay, what are the values that we'll get? What is in store for them, from a GOP perspective? If you can throw some light there.
Yeah, and I think the biggest value, which is always the hardest one to define, is happier customers, right? So now I'm able to, call up and you guys tell me the date it's going to happen, and it actually happens on the day that it's supposed to happen. And so I know from a business perspective of TCO and ROI, it's hard to define what happier customer means. And as we're funding projects, it's hard to go to the board of directors and say, hey, we're going to have happier customers because we have better accuracy. So with that, there are other things that we look at from a cost perspective. So companies that can source order lines from multiple locations have a 35% faster order cycle time, which really compresses your order to cash cycle times, which means you're getting your cash faster, which is definitely an ROI that I think most people would want to sign up for. If we go to the next slide, we'll also see that companies that focus on delivery, so focus on availability and delivery performance, they outperform their peers in both capital utilization and inventory turns. right? So they have better information about where the inventory is. They promise more accurately. They can reduce the amount of inventory they have in the supply chain, and then that allows them to have better working capital because they don't have as many dollars sitting on the shelf. And so when we compare peer-to-peer of who promises better, you'll see that they have a better utilization of both capital as well as inventory turns. Now, from a application perspective, right? So that's kind of on the business side. An application perspective, where's the value if you were to purchase a product like GOP from Oracle? So there's a lot of key things here, right? Creating a unified customer experience, whether it comes in via B2B portal, whether it comes in a B2C portal, whether it comes in from a call center or directly entered into your application or ERP. So we make existing solutions better. It's an application, it's not a toolkit. So when you go in there to do configurations, there's actually drop-down menus and things like this. We're not having to write a lot of custom stuff, in a toolkit form. So that reduces your risk and you get a higher TCO because you can get the solution deployed much, much faster. It allows you to accelerate your ability to change. So it's all rules-based configuration. So as you bring on new channels or if you want to move from lead time for products, some sets of products into real time and look at the supply chain search capability. That's very easy to do because it's all rules based. And then we deliver on a standards base. So when we talk about REST APIs and things like that, we keep current with the most modern technology that's out there. So it makes it easier from an integration perspective.
So talking from a technology perspective, your last point, right? So oftentimes we get asked, what are the prerequisites for implementing Cloud GOP? So say, for example, if a new client is embarking on Cloud GOP, the first question they ask is, okay, what are the different cloud modules required for implementing Cloud GOP?
Yeah, great question, Sanjay. Yeah, so for this one, there's no technical prerequisite. So if you just wanted to buy Cloud GOP by itself, absolutely you could do that, right?
But let me be more specific then. So say, for example, we have a lot of JDE customers who are wanting to implement Cloud GOP, but they really do not have any planning systems on GOP. They have transactional applications on JDE side. So what is in store for them from a prerequisite perspective for Cloud GOP?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of times when we work with customers that are kind of single instance ERP, what we'll find is that global order promising is just kind of one of the building blocks in their overall strategy for their supply chain. And what we'll find in those type of environments is that GOP, while there, like I said, there's no technical prerequisite, but if we wanted to move into more of a, move up the chain in the best practices for, like I discussed on the maturity curve, then that's going to require things like an ASCP plan output, right? So we need to be able to look at what's in planned production or what's planned coming in from purchase order perspective. And so in those scenarios, it may make sense for those customers to want to start adopting other cloud modules to make GOP more intelligent. So things like supply chain planning, demand planning and demand management, and adding that into the GOP mix would help make the GOP system much better. So again, no technical requirement that you have to have it, but in some instances where maybe we don't have one of the key pieces, this would be a great opportunity to expand into that particular area and make your supply chain better. Now, there are other customers that I talk to that are really grown via acquisition, right? And so they've got SAP on the back end, they've got EBS on the back end, they've got JD Edwards on the back end, and really want to provide a single view of inventory to their customers. And their inventory is fragmented in all these different systems. So what's the best way to do that? And in those customers, again, no technical requirement that you have to implement something else, but what does make sense is adding something like distributed order orchestration from the logistics and manufacturing side or the logistics and fulfillment side of the business. And what distributed order orchestration does for you, it allows you to present kind of a single face to your customer where they can look at all of the product availability using GOP and SAP and EBS and JD Edwards. And then the distributed order orchestration actually submits that order, brokers it to the right divisions, and then sends down the pieces to SAP that they need to fulfill, and then sends down the pieces to EBS or JD Edwards that they need to fulfill. So again, technically not required, but definitely some nice complementary products if you're in that particular area. And one of the great things about Oracle, right, that we always talk about is you don't have to implement everything, which is really kind of what I was saying. I think there's different flavors in which you can move to the cloud, really innovate at the edge, or this coexistence strategy is what we've been talking about, right? Running GOP standalone, and then integrating that back into your corporate ERP process, right? So maybe order to cash remains on premise, and we implement GOP to handle just the promising component of that. And then from there, if your organization wants to do so, you can slowly start moving and making the migration to cloud. And so you may pick up, maybe a division starts utilizing more of the order to cash process. And so we're going to take their existing order to cash and move that into cloud. And then from there, you can move all the way into cloud and do a complete transformation. But again, all of the applications that we're talking about today are designed to innovate at the edge, that you don't have to run, all of the order to cash processes in order for GOP to be functional.
Great information, good insights. Thank you for that, Dave. And my last question is around what are the keys to a successful cloud GOP implementation? Because what we have heard is oftentimes we hear the clients are not really successful on GOP implementations. So any insights that you can throw on what are the different key things to look for a successful GOP?
Yeah, sure thing. So a great question, right? So key success factor, there's 3 or 4 that I run into quite often, right? I think number one, first and foremost, is you need to have a great partner like AVATA help you with the transition. I think that's a real key for customers that I've seen that have been successful. 2, I would make sure that you have a defined project that's realistic for your organization. So going back to my maturity model that we talked about up front, don't try to jump from stable to transformational in your first project. Those are too big of a bite to take off, right? So move your way up the spectrum as opposed to trying to be, go all the way to the end of the maturity model, right? 3, I would plan on and expect to focus some of the project on change management. This is vital for the business users as well as the customer adoption rate, because you are changing your order to cash process, and that's a fairly extensive change to most organizations. And then the last one I would leave you with is integration. So I think this is really a key area that needs to be fully addressed, since we're really affecting one of the hearts of the business, which is really order to cash. And so I would definitely make sure that I had the integration portion of the project nailed down nice and tight.
Yep, couldn't agree more. So with respect to integration, we at AVATA have deep expertise in this area. In fact, ailing is AVATA's proprietary tool that does several things. But for today's webcast, I'd like to touch base briefly on the cloud adapters that we have developed. So ailing as a tool has several inbuilt adapters which can connect to different source ERPs, right? Whether it is JDE, whether it is EBS, and other legacy systems. And it can connect to Cloud SCM modules, like, for example, Cloud GOP, Cloud Supply Planning, Cloud Demand Management. So there are several plug-and-play adapters that we have built, which will help the clients to build the integration pretty quickly.
So, Dave, Sanjay, thanks a ton. That was incredibly informative. Wow, there's some just great capabilities out there in Oracle Cloud GOP, and I think we got a good understanding of the different variations of it, the maturity model, what to look at if you're an organization starting down this journey. One of the key things is with the Oracle's cloud platform is cloud's here, it's staying, it's going to become ubiquitous. There'll be a day where cloud will be to industry as electricity is to our homes. And one of the key things is with the cloud, you get constant updates. You're constantly evolving with the software ongoing, as opposed to the old model of yesterday where when you're on premise, you put something in and you stay with it because, damn it, it took you forever to get it in. You have tons of customizations and we're not changing. And as we all know, that's not the right model in today's quickly evolving and dynamic business environments. So, you don't have to go through those giant upgrade leaps. The next piece is, I stated this earlier, by focusing on that key link of order promising, it really is going to move your supply chain and order management end-to-end cross-functional processes to higher levels of maturity. But you can't implement the system without thinking through the change management, the people, the processes, and even the policies, right? What are the business rules? Have those discussions up front. And as Dave just said, this is the beauty of it. If I'm an SAP ERP, a Microsoft Dynamics, Exapta, JD Edwards, PeopleSoft, it does not matter. I can plug into GOP in the cloud and get all that capability and functionality. Again, think about where you're at. Be truthful and honest with yourself about your culture and truly your systems and processes when starting. So AVATA has developed a cloud roadmap offering that can help companies through multiple stages, from a readiness assessment to an implementation strategy, to looking at potentially some of our express solutions. These are solutions that we have pre-built. Sometimes they're industry specific, sometimes they go across industries. And then of course, cloud managed services. A lot of times one of the benefits of cloud is you can lower IT overhead. You still have to maintain a new system. You don't want to add additional resources to your IT staff. So this is where managed services comes in key. When it comes to cloud readiness assessment, AVATA is offering, if you attended this webinar and you're interested in hearing more, again, whether it's GOP Cloud or any aspect of the Oracle Cloud solutions, we are offering a free cloud readiness consultation. And you can, reach out to us at avata.com, connect@avata.com. Send an email. Yeah, we'd be more happy to get in touch with you and take you through this. So please do join us. Our next one is coming up March 29th. And if you're a JD Edwards customer, this one I think is going to be really impactful, because what we're going to outline there is what are the high value cloud products that you can put on top of your JD Edwards platform. So there are some specific solutions out there that our JD Edwards customers have struggled with for decades. And now you can really extend your JD Edwards processes and capabilities with some cloud extensions. And we're going to walk through what some of those high value ones are and what it means. And then again, we have one coming up on April 26th, dealing with the financial cloud and financials. So if you missed any part of this webinar, or if you want to share this webinar with a colleague, you can simply go to our website and click on the resource button, and it will pull up all of our webinars in our cloud series. Actually, it's all of our webinars that AVATA has ever done, as well as you can see real-time solution demos that are out there. So again, just go to avata.com and click on resources. I'd like to take this time to thank everyone for being here. And if you can reach out to us through all, we're on all social media. But if you want to contact us, learn some more, you can reach us at, again, connect@avata.com, or the phone number, which is also on our website. And with that, Christina, is there anything else?
I'd like to thank all the presenters too, Dave, Sanjay, and Dwayne as well. So have a good day wherever you are. Thanks for joining us.